2008, which was when Hurricane Ike hits Galveston. And at the heart of the stories are these three characters. The main character is a woman named Carly, who has grown up on Galveston. She's born on the island, and she was raised by her grandmother because her parents, her father, who is Mexican-American, and her mother, who was an immigrant from the Philippines, have left. So she was raised by her grandmother on Galveston, and her grandmother has always taught her that they are descendants of the Karankawa Indians. So if you know Texas history at all, you know that those are the one of the indigenous tribes that settled on the coast of Texas, and they're believed to have died out. There's kind of theories to what happened to them. They call them a vanished tribe. So this grandmother has raised Carly to believe that she is a descendant of this tribe. And at the time of 2008, Hurricane Ike, which is when the bulk of the book takes place, Carly is a grown woman. She's still taking care of her grandmother, and her grandmother has started slipping into dementia and is really sort of leaning into this history that she believes they have of being Karankawas in kind of startling and scary ways to Carly. So Carly is kind of grappling with what she does with this grandmother that she loves, and at the same time, Hurricane Ike is bearing down. So that's sort of the book in a nutshell, and then it jumps around from characters and jumps around in time, but it centers on those two characters. So I thought I'd read a little bit from the title story, just to kind of, since you have that background, you can understand who Carly is, her grandmother, whose name is Magdalena, and Carly's boyfriend, who has been her childhood friend, and his name is Jess. So I thought I'd read a little bit from that, and then I thought I'd finish up with something new that I wrote while I was here. So, okay, so this is just about 10 minutes or so of The Last Karankawas, the title story from the novel. Carly finally admitted something was wrong a couple of months before the hurricane, when her grandmother brought home a whole pompano and tried to eat it raw. She walked in just off her night shift and found Magdalena crouched on the living room floor, tearing strips of fish flesh with her fingers. The linen pantsuit she had worn to 6 a.m. mass bunched at her crotch, her waist, and tightened at the thighs and hips. Juice wormed down her hand, bone and meat snagged beneath her manicure. She looked up and with her mouth full said, "This is the way of our people." When Carly snatched up the newspaper and fish bundle, Magdalena sat back on her haunches and hissed. Carly dropped the whole thing in the kitchen trash can, then leaned against the stove and pressed the heels of her hands into her eyes. She waited for a few moments until she no longer felt the burn of tears threatening or the urge to scream churning in her throat. Weeks, months, they blurred together. How long Magdalena had been this way, the signs Carly had recognized. She had worked only NICU in the 2 years since graduating from nursing school, but some things you didn't forget, like a rotation at a nursing home in the skeevy part of Texas City. Signs recognized and then ignored, or perhaps denied. Even Jess had seen it on the nights when he slept over. "Babe, your grandma called me Londo today. That's weird, right?" The name of his father, years gone. The slow but steady trudge into dementia. Carly could deny it no longer. Her grandmother was moving away from her, as surely as if she were crossing the causeway. When Carly opened her eyes, the pompano stared back up at her from the open trash can. Its face was ravaged. Magdalena had always liked the head best. Still, one eye was intact, black as a piece of tar, gulf polished, fixed on the fragments of a life she couldn't see anymore. Carly couldn't blame the dementia. Well, not for all of it. Not for the fish, not for eating it raw. Magdalena had always thought it the way of their people, the Karankawas. Her grandmother had believed they were descendants of the vanished Texas tribe since Carly was a child, long before she grew old enough to witness the threads of Magdalena's mind begin to fray, then fuse again in the wrong places. Her own father had told her they had Karankawa blood, Magdalena claimed, and his father had told him, and she had come from a day when elders were believed. So as a child, Carly had believed. In the stillness before bedtime, soothed by the humming of the window AC, she had listened to the tales her grandmother weaved. The Karankawas were as real as Lafitte, as steeped in legend as the tree on 4th Street that marked his buried treasure, the one tourists searched for and none as yet had found. They became real to Carly too, real as the uneven brown coils of her hair and the freckles that fireworked her shoulders. She sensed centuries of stories running in her veins, a presence of secrets that the body and not the mind could remember. So she believed, even when her mother scolded her. Don't be silly, Maharlika used to say, firmly, hands planted on hips, whenever Carly walked into the house with mud smeared across her cheeks or white oleanders twined into the band of her ponytail. She snapped the words at her, not caring if her mother-in-law could hear. Your grandmother's people are from Texas, from Mexico. I am from the Philippines. You have no Indian in you anywhere, and the Indians all left anyway. They could not last here. Neither could Maharlika, as it turned out, who one day packed a small bag and left without any word. They assumed she returned to the Philippines, to her island just south of Manila, and the extended family they had never met. Some people are not fighters, Magdalena had said later, stroking 6-year-old Carly's hair where it lay tear-tangled in her lap. For some people, that is not their way. Yeah, enough crying, Carly Elena. Carly had wiped her face, thinking for the first time, people run away. I could too. She kept the thought tucked close in the years after, as grandmother and granddaughter crafted their own rituals, became a tribe of two. So I'm skipping ahead a little bit in this story. And at this point in the story, Carly has decided, because of Magdalena's dementia and its progression, that she's going to put her in a care home. And this is a care facility that's off the island, which is significant for Magdalena, since she roots herself so much in being from Galveston Island. And this place is inland, closer to Houston. And also Magdalena is insisting that a storm is on its way, and they're still fairly early in hurricane season, so there's no sign of it just yet, but they're about to find out that she's right. The storm, a real one, began taking shape in September, a few months after Magdalena was situated in Bay Pines. Carly saw it on the news in a patient's room and nearly dropped her blood pressure cuff. But storms were typical, and no one paid attention until the Weather Service replaced its number with a name, Ike. Jess thought he was the first to make the Ike Turner comparison, and he repeated it for Magdalena during their visit that week. She cackled while Carly rolled her eyes. They ate breakfast tacos and cookies they'd brought. It was a good day. Her grandmother's clothes were pressed and clean, her hair neatly pinned back. Her dark eyes were sharp, lighting on every movement Carly and Jess made, a bird hopping from branch to branch. Tell me about this Ike, she said with an encouraging smile. Will he be big? They think so. Carly flipped the TV to the Weather Channel, and as one, they watched the swirl of silver that was out on the Gulf, far from them, still a screen's worth of space between it and the crescent curve of the coast. They say it's headed our way. Gonna hit Cuba first, said Jess, do some damage there, then pick up speed in the Gulf from the warm air. It's been so warm out there this summer. Magdalena nodded thoughtfully, eyes fixed on the wind and water that had finally been named. I'll need to find some palm fronds. For what? Asked Jess. For my blessing, for protection. I need to burn them. We always burn them, but they don't have palm trees here, do they? Nina, bring me some from home next time you come. Jess looked at Carly, and who felt her face settle into those hard lines it always did when the delusions came on. You don't have a protection blessing, Grandma. You never have. You usually just light a candle and pray. She clucked her tongue. Well, that won't do any good. I need to burn the palms. They need to be ones from the island. You know this. No, I don't. None of this is real, Carly thought. But she said aloud, you're not allowed to burn things here, not even candles. They catch you burning a candle here, you'll be in trouble. Carly pressed her lips together in a line, willed her rising frustration to slow. I'll go to Sacred Heart, Grandma, and I'll light one for you if you want. Oh, yes, you'll be on the island. That's good. You won't leave even if they tell you, will you, Nina? Not like last time. Look how that turned out. They three quieted, recalling 2 years before, in 2006, only a year after Katrina and her devastation of New Orleans, when evacuees flooded the Houston Astrodome and the word hurricane meant a new, healthy fear in even the hardiest hunker-downers. So when Hurricane Rita appeared and veered straight at Galveston, and Carlos Saldivar called and invited them to stay with him and his wife at their new place in the hill country, they three had not hesitated. For once, not even Magdalena had said a word about evacuating. It should have been a 6-hour drive. It had taken them 11, inching along I-10 and then Highway 90, and then through the north back roads and hills and winding paths dark with trees, studded with the occasional whitetail or armadillo. When they saw a report later of a bus carrying nursing home residents that caught fire on the freeway, Magdalena cried. You were lucky, Carlos had said. They spent 2 days in the cabin, and then Rita, quite contrary, juked northeast. It was almost laughable. I guess that was all for nothing, his wife Luce had said as they loaded up the car again, and Magdalena had nodded from the back seat. Next time we stay, she said firmly. Carly had run her hands through her hair and replied then with the same words she did now. Yes, Grandma. She had lied then, as she lied now. We'll stay. On her next day off, she visited alone. She brought a box of cookies and the palm fronds she had decided she was being silly about. Where was the harm, after all? And certainly Magdalena wouldn't have access to anything causing fire. She could wind them into a crucifix shape like she used to as a girl during Mass and every Palm Sunday. But she walked in and found her grandmother in her robe on the floor, curled up in a ball, rocking back and forth and chanting nonsense. The box and palms fell to the ground. A seizure, Carly thought, as she rushed to her side, saying her name over and over, and then realized this was no seizure. Magdalena was lucid, mostly, and was telling her, stop, Nina, stop, I'm fine. It's simply the ancient Karankawa tongue. I'm letting the spirits speak through me, so they'll protect us from this storm. Carly insisted no, as she shook her shoulders. We don't know anything yet. It could move somewhere else like Rita, dissipate over Cuba. But Magdalena rose to her knees, slapped her palms against the floor, and lowered her forehead to the ground, still muttering words Carly could not understand. For protection, Nina, we will need it. Ruega conmigo. And part of her wanted to. The girl she had been listening to the stories in the artificial pool of the window unit wanted to put her head down beside her grandmother and chant made up words, believe they meant something, believe they were the kind of people who could control long ago Indian spirits. But she couldn't, and she knew it must be the Maharlika in her that kept her from even pretending. Her mother had never believed, and she had run without looking back, so Carly could too. There was lightning in her blood again, sparking through. The grandmother who loved her and had raised her and had never left was praying the rosary in Spanish now. Dios te salve Maria, llena eres de gracia. And Carly, full of shame, with shaking hands and in her throat a bright knowledge of what she could do, left the box where it was and threw the palm fronds in the trash can by the door and left without another word. So I'll stop there for the story from the novel, but I hope it gives you a good sense of, you know, the three main characters, and then it sort of, the book sort of expands and includes people in their orbit. You know, like there's a story from Magdalena's perspective, there's a story from their neighbor's perspective, there's a story from one of Jess's coworkers' perspectives, and it all sort of expands to include Galveston and a couple of different places across Texas. And I thought I'd just end by reading a little bit of something new. I think that's sometimes fun. And I was trying to take advantage of being out here at San Ysidro and, you know, like just being back in this beautiful setting and the, you know, back in the Monte and the ranch land that I haven't been, you know, lived in since I was 18. And the story came about, it's very new, it's very rough and very new, but it came about because I think maybe the second day that I was here, I drove into Uvalde and was immediately pulled over by Border Patrol. just because of, you know, I was on a side road and I wasn't driving a pickup truck, I guess. And so I just got pulled over and checked on and then sent on my way. And I was telling some friends, you know, I was so lucky that we weren't any closer to Uvalde because maybe that Border Patrol agent would have been somebody I knew from school. And then that stuck in my mind. And so this is a story about someone goes home and is pulled over by a Border Patrol agent who she does know from her past. So I kind of went with that. So thank you all for listening, and I'll just read a little bit of this. And this, as of right now, is called Say There Is a Limit. Things her father reminds her to do in her weekend alone at the casita. 1, watch for rattlers. 2, make sure she gets all her childhood things packed up, goes through every room. There are only 3 rooms. 3, the realtor is coming Monday, so tidy whatever she can. 4, lock the doors at night. 5, he's serious about those rattlers. 6, don't speed on the back roads. She sees the flashing lights in her rear view before she even lays eyes on the ranch. They do not come as a surprise. She has been driving all day, spotted the state trooper SUVs and border patrol trucks thick as chiggers the past 3 counties, parked on the overgrown edges of the highways, tucked beneath the meager shade of telephone poles or mesquites. She was finally here, finally turning off 83 South on the familiar farm road heading west, driving just over the speed limit and 2 miles from her destination. But as she crested the small hill, She spotted the distinctive wide-set headlights approaching her, the light bar on top of the white truck, before she saw the green and white CBP logo. And she knew, even as she passed, even before he did it, that he would swing a U and follow. When the lights flash, unimpressive, white and yellow, not the blue-red lights of a real cop, she thinks, her breath hisses out, puta madre. But she flicks her blinker on, veers right, and slows to a stop, irritation surging in her throat like bile. Years gone, and now she is back. And here, this is her homecoming. To be stopped by Border Patrol for nothing at all. The white and green truck parks behind her. She blinks into the golden wash of twilight, the red sun, even now, descending into the tangled horizon of thorn and tree and grass up ahead. Getting out of the truck, the agent takes his time. She thinks his with another hiss. She has not seen him, but she is so sure it is a man. She turns down her radio. It was static at this point anyway. No stations for miles that aren't Christian or country or Tejano. It's the car, she thinks, or would like to think. It's her car that struck him as suspicious. This, after all, is the realm of American pickups. White, always white to reflect the brutal sun, sides spattered and thorned and scarred, beds loaded down with ranch men things. She had forgotten, here, a fistful of miles from the border, her new black Jetta, shiny despite the dust, the hours of driving through South Texas, German-made and strange and as out of place as a skyscraper. Let it be the car then that is suspicious, she thinks, that's warranting this unwarranted highway stop. Let it not be the brown skin of the woman driving, the Ray-Bans and the black hair blowing in the windows she rolled down to soak in the sun, to indulge herself just for a moment with the romance of a homecoming and inhale the hot, dry air, the baked flower smell of caliche and grass, to remind herself where she finally was after 18 years gone. But it will turn out to be both, the car and the driver that made him stop her. When he finally climbs out and slams his door, approaches her on the driver's side, she will watch him from the side mirror. Her fingers will tighten on the wheel. Her lip will curl with scorn at the cowboy cock of his hips, how he keeps one hand hooked on his gun belt so casually, too casually. She will not be able to unseive how his face is a deeper brown than hers. She will remember that feeling long after the shock of recognizing him wears off. Because as the Border Patrol agent leans into her open window, he blinks, stares, then starts grinning as if he knows her. She sees only herself reflected in his mirrored sunglasses for a few seconds more, and she frowns. "Hell, girl," he breathes out and says her name in a long sigh like a curse that makes her head jerk back. "It is you." No, she thinks, even as she recognizes the voice. No, no, no. And then the spread of his smile, the familiar hook of his left incisor confirms it. She says his name. The shock of him singing in her chest, pushing his name out as well as a curse, she hopes sounds affectionate. She tries to smile as she speaks. "Son of a bitch," she says, and thinks, "Son of a bitch." The setting sun resembles a bullet hole in the sky, bright red and pulsing, spilling electric pinks and oranges. She's facing it when she pulls up to the address he gave her an hour earlier. So he wasn't lying when he said there was a bar out here now. She had laughed when he suggested they meet there because 18 years ago, when they two roamed these roads like wildcats, there had been nothing, just the endless and ever-present brush country and a road that was just a potholed path for trucks and smugglers all the way to the oil fields and beyond those, the border, and both truckers and smugglers would rather keep driving. But now there is a bar. It is little more than a shack on the side of the highway, a few picnic tables out front to catch the dirt and the cooked air and the boiled diesel smell thrown off by the trucks. They wear no uniforms, but she recognizes cops as soon as she walks in. Border Patrol like him, or troopers maybe. She sees it in the spread and set of the men's shoulders, in the angle of their hips, as if a gun is still slung there, as if the doors of a saloon swing shut behind them. She feels eyes on her. She grits her teeth as she counts her steps, trying to still the sway of her hips. He is waiting at the bar in jeans and a Spurs windbreaker, sipping a Miller Lite. When she approaches, he stands and opens his arms for a hug. She does so awkwardly and pulls away as soon as she can. He asks what she's drinking, and when she says Jack on the rocks, double, he raises his brows so high they nearly disappear into his receding hairline. "I remember when you could barely handle Bacardi." She laughs. "That was in high school." "Yeah," he smiles. "I guess things change." They sit at a booth near the back and split an order of loaded nachos. She asks how he's been, and he tells her about working retail in his dad's store for a few years after graduation, then taking some classes at the junior college in criminal justice, and then getting the law enforcement itch. As he speaks, she watches him, assesses him, this man who was once the boy who took up so much space in her memories of those years. The same height he was in high school, perhaps a bit more stooped. His neck is thicker, the middle of him softer and saggier. He has put on some muscle, some weight, mostly weight. His hair is thinning, but still dark, almost as dark as his eyes, which are still rimmed with those long lashes she used to envy, even when they were kids, when she called him Bambi once in a whisper in the middle of school mass at Sacred Heart, and he snorted with laughter so hard one of the nuns had to pinch his arm. And how is your, she hesitates, family? Vague, keep it vague, she thinks. She really can't remember if he is still married to that girl, if they still had just the one kid. He beams and pulls out his phone. 3 children, she sees when he hands it to her and tells her to scroll. 2 boys and a girl, all of whom have those eyes, their mother's curly brown hair. She remembers that much from high school. The girlfriend's lion's mane of raucous curls that was honestly her one beauty. A spiderweb crack lances across the right corner of his screen, but she can still make out the family. They are posed at the front of Sacred Heart on Christmas. The boys have their shirts tucked in, belts on. The girl wears a dress of black lace. There are lines around the eyes and jaw of his wife that were not there when she was the girlfriend in high school. To please herself, she notes the chicken wing of fat wobbling beneath his wife's arms. Then she mentally scolds herself. She was never your rival, she thinks. And yet all women are, aren't they? Garth Brooks is singing from the jukebox, and a white couple have started to dance next to their table. So you never got married, he asks. And when she laughs loudly, he smiles, unsure at the joke. No, not the marrying kind, I guess. Boyfriend? No guy at all? Come on, I can't believe that. She knows from the look he gives her, his eyes skeptical but sparking just a bit, that he remembers who she was in high school, how she was in high school. But she flashes her teeth and gives him the line about how she has no time, she's been busy, she's happy, sips her drink, orders another, pays for this one herself. After they finish the nachos and her drink, she says she should be going. When she hugs him politely, she feels him start to lean in and angle his hips, but she steps back, flashes those teeth again at him. She doesn't know why she smiles so much. Why now, hours back in South Texas, she feels the need to reassure him, reassure men that she is friendly, that whatever version of a woman they think she might be, she isn't. He says he's off tomorrow at 7. He sways a little. He took 2 Patron shots before she got there. Cool if I go to the ranch, hang out before you leave? Sure. Again, why can she not just say no? You're okay to drive back? I could follow you home if you want. No, I'll be fine. He wants to hug her again, she can tell, so she steps away and smiles. In the heated stillness of the smaller bedroom at the casita, she sleeps with the windows open and the fans going full blast, kicks her bare legs on top of the sheets and the colcha. She has turned off all lights, but the moon is full and brilliant, casts a soft silver wash across her car in the small driveway, across the west-facing wooden porch swing her father and her uncles built. Moths spatter against the moonlit screens, the white walls. Outside, the clacking of mesquite branches, birdsong, crickets, rustles that could be javelinas brooding in the brush, jackrabbits bolting, border crossers in the monte, headed for other roads, other ranches. She bites her lip and tries not to think that way, swallows down an irrational surge of fear. She longs for her house in the Houston Heights, the honks and sirens in the distance or closer, the blare of a radio on 97.9 The Box, or the chatter of people walking back from the bars. She wishes in that moment for the bustle of a city breathing, not this stillness where every sound means something wild. She focuses, the size of the tall grass as the cooling air moves through it, scent of cotton and dust, wood planks sweet and dry, the rat-a-tat rap of a woodpecker against the mesquite by her window. No coyotes that she can hear. She falls asleep hoping to hear them. Things that were true in high school that no longer are true. 1, she heard coyotes singing most nights. 2, she could barely handle Bacardi or any liquor. 3, she lived in Uvalde but spent most weekends out on her father's ranch in this very casita an hour's drive south. 4, she knew these roads so well, every curve and bump, that she could drive them with her eyes closed, and on 2 occasions had done just that, with him and the other boys cheering her on. 5, driving at night did not spook her. The glints of light cast up in the brush alongside the highway, a broken bottle, or a reflector hanging on a fence post did not make her think deer and fist her hands on the wheel. 6, she believed what he and those boys told her, believed one of them would love her. 7, she did not look at everything and see a threat. I'll stop there. Thank you all. Thank you very much for listening.
A lot of fun.
Right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. I think it's you really caught being stopped by the Border Patrol. It's quite different than being stopped by a state trooper, and it always ends up being kind of a weird, awkward encounter with the Border Patrol. And that was certainly a weird one there. So well done.
Yeah, it was much weirder in the story than it was in real life. Thankfully, I have a lot of privilege, and he just sort of let me go. But yeah, no, I made it weird for my character.
Well, it is weird, even if you have privilege, it's still weird because there's always a conversation that starts that's kind of unnecessary. Anyway, I wanted to open it up to other people on the call and anybody who would like to ask or comment something. I think if you're unmuted, great. If I can help you be unmuted, I'll also help.
Yeah, and if the chat works too, I can read it as well.
Oh,
Kimberly, hi, it's Bob Breeden. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Yeah,
Yes.
hi.
Hey. So I was intrigued with the title of the when the email came out and with the last Karankawas, and I missed unfortunately some of your introductory comments. So I don't know if you spoke of what the title, how the title played a role in the actual novel itself. And was the anything related to the culture of the Karankawa Indians? How did it influence the novel?
Yeah, thank you. I said this a little bit, and so if you missed it, that's totally fine. It's sort of nebulous, and but the title comes from the 2 central characters who are the woman Carly, who I read about, and her grandmother. The stories are set in for the most part, present day. I think the oldest story is probably from set in the 80s. The title comes from the fact that Carly's grandmother, Magdalena, has always raised her to believe they grew up in Galveston, and she's raised her to believe that they are descendants from the Karankawa Indians, the native population. And they have, I don't want to ruin the book experience next year for anybody, but they don't have anything to support that. They just have, Magdalena just has oral history. She has belief. She has what she's been told. And they sort of have to take it on faith, on invention, who knows, a number of different things to support that. And so as far as the culture of the Karankawas, it comes into play just a little when Carly and actually the character Jess, who is her boyfriend, who is fascinated by this story about how they might be Karankawa Indians, and even though he is not, he just sort of adopts it and learns all these things about them. So the culture of the Karankawa tribe comes up a couple of times in the book, just in terms of people sort of learning about them. And for Carly, they really come into play because she has learned that the Karankawas were nomadic, and they would kind of go up and down the coast, and they would they made boats and canoes, and they would go out and they would travel. And she has this real desire to get out. She's been on Galveston her whole life, and she's sort of, for lack of a better term, stuck there with her grandmother and all these family pressures and cultural pressures that keep her there. And she's always sort of desired to leave. So as much as she kind of struggles with the fact that they may or may not be Karankawa descendants, she recognizes something in them that could be in her, can I just get up and leave? How tied am I to this place? So I would say that that's how that kind of comes into play.
Okay.
And like I said, whether or not they actually are is kind of something that gets explored over the stories in the novel. But I think it gives them a lot to think about, because it really thinks about how tied they are to a place like Galveston or a place like Texas. And there's characters who are born and raised in these places, and there's characters who are immigrants and transplants. And so they're all sort of reckoning with what it's like to belong somewhere, and to be part of a people.
I grew up in Matagorda, Matagorda County, and so we actually studied about the tribes in junior high, and it was fascinating. Of course, everyone seemed to be intrigued that they were supposedly cannibalistic, one of only two tribes in the Midwest that were cannibals. And so and there's still relics, I think, they find on the coast and some of the digs that they've done down close to Matagorda or on the coast.
Right.
And I think there was a major thesis that was done that's located in the museum here about the tribe with a student from Bay City, and also this person's a doctor. He became a doctor. And it was a massive bunch of research that he did on the tribes that are located here. So I found it fascinating, and thank you for speaking to us today.
Of course, yeah, they're fascinating. I tried to incorporate, like I said, I incorporate what I could, but it's really all about the characters and what they know and what they think and what they learn. Yeah, but it's a fascinating history. Thank you for the question.
Okay.
I was wondering, did you know that the Karankwe actually would leave Galveston Island during the hurricane season and live in the pine forests on the mainland?
No, I did not know that. Yeah. They would evacuate then.
Yeah, they wouldn't pray
makes
away
sense.
the hurricanes. They simply got off the island. But the book, the memoir written by Cabeza de Vaca, who was the first Spaniard to spend time in Texas, he landed on Galveston Island, so he actually has quite a bit of
Yeah,
material.
Cabeza de Vaca makes a couple of appearances in the book. Yeah.
But I think it's just wonderful how, this whole thing of wondering what our ancestry is like. It's a fairly common human thing, and different people have more elaborate history, sometimes based also on very scant knowledge. And now with the genetic testing that's available, you can pick up a few pieces, but it's still a wonderful. I love to see literature created out of this rather boring landscape that I live in, here in Houston. It was great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
I'm not sure if Courtney and Alston,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
well, I'm not sure if Courtney and Alston will remember this, but my family had a place in LaPorte. And we have a little beach in front of our house. And my mother found an arrowhead that had washed up. And I mean, the thought of that, hill country, yes, South Texas, yes, but LaPorte, that was so cool that she found that. And we called them caronculas, but anyway, we still have that arrowhead, and it was so cool. We lost our house during Carla, so we still have great memories.
I remember the bathtub was still standing.
Wow.
Yes, it
Wow.
was
Of all things.
a bathtub. Yeah.
Must have a foundation.
2009, being at the Sundance Film Festival, and I was sitting next to a book agent, and I pitched him on this story about Ike that my dentist told me that I never did anything with it. He didn't seem very excited by it, but it was a wonderful story. I thought that my dentist had a friend who was also a dentist who owned two of those houses on stilts on the Bolivar Peninsula.
Mhm.
And everybody was supposed to evacuate, but there was some ex-Marine vet who lived in a trailer, and the dentist allowed this Marine, this old vet, or middle-aged man, to leave the trailer on his property for free, so he would be sort of keep his eye on the two houses, which are, one was used by the family, and the other was sort of a rent house, you know. And with Ike happening, the dentist calls down and he gets this caretaker on the phone and says, you know, you should leave. And he says, well, I don't really have any money for a motel. I don't have any family. Can I stay in your house? So the dentist says, yeah, go right ahead. And the guy goes into the house. It's further from the water. But of course, this is, I think, was it Crystal, not Crystal Beach, but where the eye of the hurricane actually came over the very, very center over the Bolivar Peninsula and went into Galveston Bay, Trinity Bay. It's something city,
Texas.
Surfside.
Not
What is
sure.
Crystal Beach, right?
Crystal Beach was, that's the only thing I can think of.
Well, anyway, so this particular town, this only town in Bolivar was building a new city hall. And since it was in hurricane country, they built the frame out of I-beams. As the night progressed, the house that was closer to the water came loose and smashed into the house in the back of the property because there was like 30 feet of water. And there was no power, and the caretaker simply, in this pitch black night, stepped out on the porch and he's surrounded by water, and he jumped in it. And he found a piece of lumber, a hollow door or something like that. And eventually he sort of bumped up against the steel I-beam of the cupola of the city hall that's now there. And he grabbed it and he held on to it all night long. And in the dawn's early light, he looked around and the water was still, you know, covering the ground, but it had receded quite a bit. And he realized that the water had stripped off all of his clothing. He was stark naked, holding on to the beam. And then a helicopter came overhead, and it was a Coast Guard helicopter. And they dropped on a basket and they picked him up and they flew him to a hospital in San Antonio. And this is a true story, but I just thought it was such a great story. I mean, the drama.
There's so many good true stories that would have been too strange in a fiction book, if that makes sense. Like I came across so many, and
Well,
they're just
absolutely.
too strange, right? They would have read too fake. So I love stories like that. Thank you.
Well, you're welcome. I don't know what you're thinking, but anyway. But yeah, I think I created a lot of stories.
Yes, yeah, and
But I'm
Harvey
glad somebody's
too.
working.
You know, a lot. Yeah.
Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Kim?
Well, I may be a bit prejudiced, but being her dad, I just wanted to say that I enjoyed both of those stories. I thought the new one set in out there near Uvalde and Carrizo Springs, I thought was very vivid. I could see it all, you know, in my mind, just hearing her speak about it. But I also wanted to say that, you know, I had only recently been at a museum there near Victoria at the university, actually at the University of Houston. Victoria has a small museum there having to do with the Karankawas and with the French explorers and some of the Mexican expeditions that came following the French. And the story is that the last Karankawas were actually killed by that Mexican expedition that came to try and find the fort that had been abandoned by the French somewhere near Matagorda.
Hmm.
Oh, yeah. Thank you, Dr. Garza, who is also my.
You're welcome, Dr. Garza.
Fascinating. No, really, there's a lot. There's so much that's currently being uncovered about them, you know, and it gets to a point, and I'm still in the process of revising the book. It's in final stages of being revised right now, and it should be ready in the spring. And it gets to the point where I would go back and revise huge chunks of it because I learned something else new. And at a certain point, I had to be like, this isn't a biography of the Karankawas. It's about these characters who maybe took 7th grade Texas history and that's about it, and have decided that they, know things, or they pick up things and they learn things. And also that they're told things, right? The oral history of people, whether you're Filipino immigrants, whether you're Tejanos in South Texas or on the coast, like that plays a big part in who they are. So it continues to be fascinating. I read a lot. It probably won't all make it into the book. But I'd like to think that I'll know more than my characters will know, right? So that's maybe a good thing.
People always, they need their stories. That's the crux of it. That's so interesting.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much. Unless anybody else has any last comments, thanks everyone for joining the call tonight. Thanks to Kim for being a resident. And we've really enjoyed having you, and I've enjoyed getting to know you a bit. Going forward, due to that hot, dry air you mentioned in the story, we do take a break for the residency in the summer months, and we'll start again in October with Ben Fountain will be there with who wrote the acclaimed novel Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, followed by.
I'm really grateful I don't have to follow Ben Fountain, so that's exciting. Thank you very much for Alston and Holly and the board of the residency. Thank you all. It's been a pleasure, and I'm very grateful. So thank you.
Well, you're welcome very much.
Thank you all for listening. Yeah.
And we just published our website yesterday I've resisted having one, and we went ahead and did it. And I think it was a good idea. So there's a lot of information about Kim and for the other residents and the upcoming residents. And so if you get a chance, might look at that. Anyway, thank you all. We'll say good night and see you back in the fall.
Yeah.
Thank
Right.
you.
all.
Thank you.
Bye.
You were
Thank
spot
you,
on,
Doctor.
Kimberly.
Thank you,
Spot
Kim.
on.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you all.
Bye-bye.
I
Bye.